Difficulties, folks. Thank you, Mr. Kevin Cody, for the backup laptop. So this is reaching across the aisle, improving security through partnership. Not a very technical talk. We're really just going to talk about the current state of IT and IT security and how they are kind of drifting a little bit, and maybe some things that we can do to improve things. So first things first, I'll finger myself. You guys will get some interesting information out of that. I want to hear about what your role is in information security or in IT. We'll talk about the state of the union, which is pretty fractured right now. Talk about how do we come together and have a little discussion at the end. So finger was an old Unix command for anybody that remembers that. It's a way to find out more information about a person in old Unix systems. This is what an output of finger looks like. So my background is I started out really as a BBS admin back in the old dial-up days. Moved on to be a desktop admin, a server admin, network architect, and today I work in information security exclusively. I've been doing this for about 19 years as a job. For the rest of it, you can check out LinkedIn. I'm very honored to be here today at this awesome conference, and thanks for coming to my talk. So throughout all this stuff, the BBS admin and the desktop admin, I always felt like as the administrator, I was also in charge of security. Security was on me because it's my system. In the BBS days, you always had trolls. You know, you always had people trying to break in, do things. So it kind of taught me, like, you know, if you own the system, you have to secure it. And that's now that companies have their own information security teams, that's kind of changed a little bit. And it's security. All security is really seems to be on the security team, and we should try to fix that. So what do you folks do? Do we have any people who are not on a security team? People who are like, what do you do? DevOps. Sysadmin. Awesome. Okay, so there's some stuff in here for you guys as well. It's really, how do we reach across the aisle and talk to each other a little more? So you kind of think about the business is the entire country, right? And IT is kind of down here in Hawaii. You know, the business is worried about what the business is trying to do. They're just trying to get the job done, to sell whatever they're selling, make whatever they're making. They really aren't too concerned about IT. They kind of push us off to the side. And when it comes to security and IT, we're, even pretty separate ourselves at this point. So how do we come together? Because right now we're all building IT systems. We all have our own priorities, and we are all in it together. So we should start acting like it. Most of the time, this is how IT sees InfoSec. It's, a pretty scary picture. There's not a whole lot you can do to dress it up or make it look better or cuter. But that's, kind of how they see us. And, they kind of say, okay, well, you guys are responsible for security on desktops and laptops and servers and internal, external networks and partner networks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all security things, right? Encryption is a security thing. So, why wouldn't security be responsible for it? And on top of it, security is also responsible for protecting against 0 days and protecting against nation states and ransomware and all this stuff. And, first and foremost, you don't want to be in a blog post by Mr. Brian Krebs. So it's not great. It's and then of course we're also compliance too, which means we're auditors, which nobody likes that. It's an ugly picture. So how do we make it better? Through partnership. No. I gotta go with the Zima. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. It's an honor. All right, I will be enjoying this throughout the rest of the talk. Oh, man. So what do we mean by partnership? It's embedding security everywhere, embracing security-minded people who happen to be on these other teams, because they are out there. There are the desktop admins who really love locking down their desktops. You know, the server guys who eat and breathe this stuff, and we just don't know about them because they're not on the security team. Owning security issues and communicating a lot, it will help this stuff. Excuse me. So I'll start at the top, because IT management can really drive a lot of this partnership and collaboration. So consider the question, what happens if a system I own is responsible for the breach because I didn't patch it or whatever? It's my system. What happens if you own a system that's the root cause of breach? That should be number one in any IT manager's head. And that kind of thinking should be driven down to their respective teams. Nobody wants to be that guy. No one wants to have their system be the root cause of the breach. So start acting like it. Own security findings, and don't push back on security findings. They're yours. It doesn't matter if you inherited them from an acquisition, or the previous administration was here and they didn't care about security, so it's still your problem in the end. So step up, take ownership, and act like it. And a hacker would never do that is not a compensating control. The number of times I've heard this from various teams, well, a hacker would never. No. That's you're starting from a bad place if that's your mindset, because a hacker doesn't think like that. A hacker says, what can I do? Well, what are all the possibilities? How can I push this? So this type of thinking needs to come from IT managers down to their people, and that will really help the collaboration. On the client endpoints, I'm talking about the desktops, laptops, mobile devices, that sort of stuff, things that are running email and Office, They're the primary entry point nowadays. It's not about the bad guys just beating on the external network. They are phishing and getting in through the client endpoints. So they are the most, the first entry point. We have to defend them like it's the first entry point. We have to care about them as if they are the most targeted system. It's not necessarily your database server or even a web server. It's these systems. So the admins of these systems should be empowered and encouraged to harden them as tightly as possible, to do whatever they can to lock them down. A lot of times they're more worried about user experience, or more worried about, making sure that a reboot doesn't happen because, yes, I understand you have to patch, but you can't reboot my box. No. We have to do everything we can on these systems because they're the first way in. So discuss hardening strategies with these teams. As the security people, go to them, give them ideas, show them not necessarily new products or vendor pitches, but different things they can do natively on the system to lock it down. People don't need to be local admin. If somebody comes to you and say they need to be local admin, no, they don't. And then if they say, no, but the vendor said, no, the vendor's wrong. They don't need to be local admin. And that's something that the desktop team should be able to say themselves. They shouldn't need security to step in and say, no, you can't have local admin. That's these people own these systems. They should be able to say when, that local admin's not an option. Monitor and obliterate software installs that are outside the baseline. Super important. People will always try to get around and to install things that they shouldn't install because, they need it or they have to have it. If you have a baseline, this is the software that's allowed on the system, go find the stuff that is not allowed on the system. Old versions of Firefox, old versions of Adobe Reader, things that you guys, did not allow from the beginning. Don't allow it going forward. Monitor for it. And if you're a desktop admin, definitely be vocal when you see security gaps. Let the security team know if you feel like you are not getting the traction you need, because security can come in with a hammer and actually nail some of this stuff down. From the server side, this is the enterprise horsepower, right? This is the stuff that runs the business. It's responsible for everything, where the applications are running, where the data is, where the authorization and access is permitted. Very important systems, right? limiting access and segmentation and that kind of stuff is even more critical here. And that's only going to happen with communication. You're not going to be able to segment your servers unless you're talking to a bunch of people. And that includes the business, that includes the network team, and it includes security as well. But, that sort of thinking, you're never going to segment your network unless people are talking and unless people are collaborating and unless people are partnering. As far as, patching, yes. Business owners can't dictate patch cycles, but again, in the mindset of partnership, the business should at least have a voice. There may be a reason why a server can't be rebooted at midnight. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Well, we reboot servers at midnight. Yes, but there might be reasons, overnight batch jobs, things that are happening, where it just can't happen. So, security tends to be the team of no. They're seen as the team of no, you can't do that. By collaborating with the business and understanding their needs and their schedules, you can actually start being seen more as a partner. The server admins really need to validate what they're doing as far as patching and backups and expiring accounts and that kind of stuff. That shouldn't be security's job. Security shouldn't have to come to you and say, hey, did you patch last month? Remember how we were supposed to do that? Did you do that? How well did it go? What percentage? I mean, yes, we can find it with our vulnerability scanners, but as a system admin, wouldn't you want to know that yourself? And review access regularly because, again, you guys own everything about how to get into the network. Logins, what accounts are there, who has access. If somebody switched roles, do they have the correct amount of access for their new role? Identify and fix broken processes. If you go back and do some of this validation and say, okay, we found a bunch of systems that are missing patches, why is that? There must be something broken. There's some sort of business process that is not correct that allowed that to happen. From the network side, this is another challenge. I've worked in organizations where the people responsible for firewalls, not the firewall team, they're the network access team. And so their job is to provide access, not to firewall. That's an incorrect mindset. Really, you are the gatekeepers and you are the access providers. And there's a balance there. So you should be doing things like questioning overly permissive requests, partner extranets, this kind of stuff. You should be asking questions when the business says we need a new doorway into the network. And network gear has traditionally been seen as, it's just infrastructure. It's pretty solid stuff. No, there's critical vulnerabilities in network gear too. And network teams aren't necessarily in the same kind of patching cadence that the workstation and the server people deal with. But they should be. There are vulnerabilities out there and they need to get patched just like anything else. Especially because, everybody is impacted when there's a security vulnerability on a firewall or something like that. Know and communicate every ingress and egress point. This is very difficult, but only the network guys know where those things are. You have the map. You just have to communicate the map so that we can properly defend you. Weak management protocols, that stuff is pretty straightforward. Account for protocols that don't require authentication. Okay, that's one super key thing that a lot of network teams don't think about. A lot of the network protocols that are in most modern environments right now don't require authentication. I'm talking about things like ARP and DHCP, stuff that can be spoofed, stuff that can be used by an attacker to do bad things. So you have to account for that. A lot of enterprise type network gear gives you the ability to account for unauthenticated protocols, to be able to deal with them and secure them. But a lot of those types of things aren't turned on. So by going to the network team and saying, hey, what have you done to secure ARP? What have you done to secure, some of these other protocols, routing protocols, that kind of stuff? It'll really help improve security overall because, most network teams don't really think about the security vulnerabilities in the protocols themselves. Patch well ahead of end of life. This is especially important for anything that's doing like VPN connections because old VPN gear only supports old encryption, which means that you're never going to be able to properly secure tunnels until you have gear that can properly encrypt those tunnels. And I see this too many times as far as default credentials. Network teams are especially bad at leaving default credentials around. Cisco as creds is really just an example from the docs. You don't need it that way to make your router run. So just keep that in mind. For developers, when it comes down to it, there's no difference between a security bug and a functional bug. They're the same thing. There's no difference between a functional bug and a security bug. It's all quality. Okay, it's all quality, and it should all be seen as quality. If you're writing code and you have a security bug, it's a quality bug. It's a quality issue. Deal with it as such. If you got contractors that are writing code for you, make security bugs a quality thing, and don't accept code that has security bugs in it. And if you find code from the contractor that has security bugs in it, treat it as a quality issue and put it into the contract. You're not allowed to have poor quality code, And involving InfoSec teams throughout the SDLC avoids future rework. And so here's a picture of an application that did not go through any sort of security review. I have this hanging in my cube because I love it. It's a million microservices and maybe 3 or 4 different types of databases. And then there's a Mac Mini under Brent's desk, and that is part of this infrastructure. This would have never gotten through a security review because it's just too much of a mess. Why wouldn't you involve security from the beginning and help you build something that's a little more resilient, something with less attack surface? This is just a mess waiting to be attacked. From the DevOps side, there's a little more to it because you own all, or at least most of this stuff above. So you have to do all of the things these other teams are doing from a security standpoint. Infrastructure as code must account for patching. It must account for new versions of software. If you're spinning up new VMs on the fly and those VMs have vulnerabilities from a year ago, that's not helping anything. So you really have to treat infrastructure as code as any other normal infrastructure. And again, involve security in every phase, from planning to the actual release, because we can help throughout that entire thing. Now, InfoSec teams, you are my people, and as people, we are imperfect, so we've done some bad things too as security people. One of the things is blaming the user, saying, okay, well, the user's dumb for clicking that thing. The user in a business scenario is typically not worried about information security at all, and you're not going to make them worry. I mean, when it comes down to it, they got an email, it looks important, they're going to click it if they think it's important. So we have to account for that. We have to harden our systems, make sure that their workstations are locked down. We have to put different controls in place to try to account for the fact that the user's going to click, because they just will. I mean, they're just trying to get their job done. Sending canned, unvalidated vulnerability reports on a Friday is wrong and evil, and you are wrong and evil if you do that. Especially any unvalidated vulnerability report is kind of evil. All you're going to do is not make partners. You're not going to make friends if you just send something from Qualys and you haven't checked any of it, and maybe it's not even against systems that are owned by the company. And name-calling devs and infrastructure admins is destructive, and it's anti-partnership. To say, oh, well, look at this stupid cross-site scripting bug that they put in this application. That's so dumb. Or, we found default credentials over here on this server. Oh man, those guys are so lazy. You have no idea why that may have happened. Again, could have been an acquisition, or somebody left the company, or there's any number of reasons why these things can happen. So drop the name calling and really try to figure out how we fix the issue. That will help you make friends on the other side. Be facilitators. Be communicators. Be the ones that, really want to show and work and explain why things are happening. If you are absolutely certain that you found a vulnerability on a server and the server guys can't figure out why or what that is or what it actually means, sit down with them, call a meeting on that one particular thing, and let's walk through it and explain and show and prove. And once they actually see it and understand it, then they'll say, okay, well, this person was willing to take the time to explain it to me and to really, flesh it out. And now I understand it. And now I have a partner on the other side, instead of just getting a piece of paper that says red, PCI fail, Learn other teams' tools if it helps get bugs fixed faster. This was handy for my team recently, where we had a team that used Jira. And we found a bunch of vulnerabilities in a web application. And yeah, we could have thrown them a PDF that was really difficult for them to consume and do anything with. But rather than go that way, we decided to use their process for consuming bugs, and that was Jira. So we learned Jira and how they sat down with them and learned how to prioritize it in Jira to make sure that it got fixed in whatever cycle we felt it needed to get fixed in. And that was very helpful, and they were very appreciative that we would take the time to do that, and they felt like they had a partner in security because of it. Show the value in doing things right by demonstrating the costs of doing it wrong. So if you find a bunch of issues in a particular system, make sure you try to quantify, like, look at how much time we're going to spend fixing this thing. If we had just done it right, we would have saved all this time. If we had just been patching, if we had just been installing middleware updates, which are a giant pain for everyone. That's the kind of stuff that really helps move things forward. And just remember that assigning blame isn't your job. Identifying risk is. Don't point fingers. Just really find the stuff and try to work with other teams to help get it worked out. So that was my idea behind a partnership. Embedding security everywhere, embracing the security people that are out there that aren't on the security team, owning issues, and communicating and working as a team. Any questions around why this man is vacuuming the desert or otherwise? Any thoughts out there? Sir?
Working with you and your organization?
It is. Slowly but surely. It's not a quick process, but it is absolutely. The Jira example, certainly, and then, sitting down and talking through vulnerabilities, absolutely. We have one person over on the desktop side. He's responsible for Macs, and I love him and I curse him at the same time, because when I'm getting patched on my Mac, I have 5 minutes to save my work, and then it's bouncing. I'm getting patched, and on one side I'm like, Jason, and then I'm like, Jason, like, what a good guy, so there are those people there. And if you find them and talk with them and really, see what they're interested, yeah, you can definitely move the ball forward for sure. Back there.
You find it better to start with, one monolithic meeting and going over like a guideline or something, or do you find it better to just start picking up cases between that, of the issues you're talking about, and just kind of case by case establishing rapport between the different groups?
My opinion, and this is just my opinion, but it seems easier to do it on case by case. You can just sit there and learn, who's out there. And the security champions will pop out. They'll stand out, and that's when you go in there and target them. Or it's really particular issues, vulnerability management, patching, releases, particular issues to go after, not necessarily particular teams, or to stand up and say, "Hey guys, we're doing this. Partner with us." It's better to give more of more of a personal touch to it. And sit down with those teams individually. All right, my time's up. And thanks everyone for coming today. Really appreciate it.